Carolyn let herself be led away from the ballroom, away from the stares and the whispers in the phones recording every second of her humiliation. Behind her, she could hear Dylan's voice, still talking to Patricia, still asking his mother what happened instead of following his wife. The coat check room was small and quiet. Caroline sat on a wooden stool, her hands still trembling, while Jessica stood guard at the door. "That was not an accident," Jessica said quietly. Carolyn looked up at her oldest friend. "Oh, mija, I know. I recorded it, the whole thing. Before the tear, I saw Patricia look at the camera. She winked at Donna Fletcher." Caroline's hands moved to her belly again. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, completely unaware that her grandmother had just humiliated her mother in front of 300 of the wealthiest people in the city, that the video was probably already online, that Caroline's life had just changed in ways she could not yet comprehend. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unlock the screen. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock. The motion was compulsive, automatic. She could not stop. The video was already trending, 2 million views in the first hour. The comments loaded slowly. Some defended her. Most did not. Gold digger, spoiled rich girl. She trapped that poor man with a baby. Karma for thinking she is better than everyone. Carolyn could not stop reading them, could not stop scrolling. Even as the words blurred together, even as Jessica tried to take the phone away, she kept reading, kept punishing herself with every cruel observation from complete strangers who had decided in 30 seconds of video that they knew exactly who she was. "Caroline," Dylan pushed into the coat check room. His tie was loosened, his face flushed. "Are you okay? Mom feels terrible. She did not mean for that to happen. You know how she gets when she has been drinking." Carolyn looked at her husband, really looked at him. His first instinct had not been to check on her. It had been to defend his mother, to explain away what had happened, to make excuses. "I want to go home," Carolyn said quietly. "We should go back out there. Show everyone you are fine. If we leave now, it looks like you are ashamed." "I am ashamed," Carolyn said. "Your mother just stripped me in front of 300 people, and you want me to go back out there and smile about it?" Dylan's jaw tightened. "That is not what I said. I just think running away makes it worse. I am not running away. I am 7 months pregnant, and I have just been humiliated. I want to go home." "Fine." Dylan's voice was clipped. "I will get the car." He left without touching her, without asking if she needed help standing, without any acknowledgement that his wife had just been exposed and mocked in the most public way possible. Jessica helped Caroline to her feet. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No," Caroline's voice was steadier than she expected. "I will be okay." But she was not okay, not even close. As she walked through the service entrance to avoid the main ballroom, as she waited for Dylan to bring the car around, as she sat in the passenger seat watching the city lights blur past, Carolyn felt something shift inside her. This was not an accident. Her mother-in-law had planned this. The dress, the flowers, the cameras, all of it orchestrated to humiliate her in the most public, permanent way possible. The question was why, and more importantly, what was Caroline going to do about it? Caroline could not stop shaking. Dylan drove in silence, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Every few minutes, his phone would buzz with incoming calls and texts. His parents, his brother, his friends, everyone wanting to know what had happened at the gala. He did not answer any of them. He also did not speak to Carolyn. When they reached their apartment building, Dylan finally turned to look at her. "You are still shaking." "I know. Maybe we should go to the hospital, just to make sure the baby is okay." Carolyn wanted to say no, wanted to go upstairs, lock herself in the bedroom, and pretend the entire evening had not happened. But the baby was kicking harder than usual, as if sensing her mother's distress. And her hands would not stop trembling, no matter how hard she tried to still them. "Okay," she said quietly. The emergency room was bright and sterile and too loud. A television in the waiting area was playing the late news. Caroline saw herself on the screen, saw the dressed hair, saw her exposed pregnant body, saw Patricia's hand on her glass, her face a mask of false concern. Dylan saw it too. His face went pale. "Jesus, it is everywhere. A nurse called Caroline back almost immediately. Pregnancy complaints always got fast-tracked. Dylan followed, his phone still buzzing relentlessly in his pocket. Dr. Rachel Morrison arrived within 20 minutes. She was kind and efficient, running through the standard checks with practiced ease. Heartbeat strong, baby moving well. Carolyn's blood pressure was elevated, but not dangerously so. "The baby is fine," Dr. Morrison said gently, "but you need to try to calm down. Stress like this is not good for either of you." "I am trying," Caroline said. I know." Dr. Morrison glanced at Dylan, who was typing furiously on his phone in the corner. "Do you have support at home? Someone who can help you manage your stress levels?" Caroline followed the doctor's gaze to her husband. Dylan was completely absorbed in his phone, his face tight with concentration. Managing something, fixing something, none of it involving his wife. "My father," Caroline said quietly. "I have my father." Dr. Morrison nodded. "Good. I want you to call him. Tonight. And I want you to consider taking a few days away from whatever is causing this level of stress." After the doctor left, Dylan finally looked up from his phone. "That was Trevor. He saw the video. He wants to know if you are okay." "Am I okay?" Caroline's voice came out sharper than she intended. "What do you think, Dylan?" "I think my mother made a mistake. I think you are overreacting." The words hit Caroline like a physical blow. Overreacting? The dress was already coming apart. Mom was trying to help. She had too much wine. These things happen. "She winked at the camera before she tore my dress, Dylan. Jessica recorded the whole thing." Dylan's jaw clenched. "Jessica has never liked my mother. Of course she is going to make it look worse than it was." Carolyn stared at her husband, at the man she had married 2 years ago, the man who had promised to love and protect her, who was now standing in a hospital room, defending his mother while his pregnant wife sat on an exam table, still wearing a borrowed coat over her ruined dress. "I want to call my father," Caroline said quietly. "Your father hates my family. My father has been nothing but respectful to your family. He has given you both space to build your marriage. He has never once interfered. He just sits up in his estate judging us, judging me for not being rich enough, successful enough, good enough for his daughter." "That is not true." "Is it not?" Dylan's voice rose. "Every time we see him, I can feel his disappointment. His daughter, who could have married anyone, married a middle manager from Queens. I am sure that thrills him." Carolyn felt tears prick at her eyes. "I did not marry you because of where you came from. I married you because I loved you." "Loved," Dylan repeated, past tense. "I did not mean it like that." "Yes, you did." Dylan grabbed his jacket from the chair. "I'm going to get some air. Call your father if you want. I am sure he will have plenty to say about my horrible family." He left, just walked out of the hospital room, leaving Caroline sitting there in her borrowed coat, her ruined dress, her elevated blood pressure, and her 7-month pregnant belly. She pulled out her phone for what done. Her fingers moved automatically, finding her father's number. Richard Hayes answered on the second ring. "Caroline?" His voice was sharp with concern. "I saw the news. Are you all right?" And just like that, Caroline shattered. All the control she had been holding on to since the ballroom, since the car ride, since the hospital, just broke. She started crying, deep, ugly, gasping sobs that she could not stop. "Where are you?" Richard asked, his voice deadly calm. "The hospital. St. Mary's. The baby is fine. I am fine. I just cannot stop shaking. I will be there in 20 minutes. Dad, you do not have to." 20 minutes, Caroline." He hung up. Caroline sat in the hospital room, still crying, still shaking, but feeling something shift inside her. Something that felt almost like relief. She was not alone. Whatever was happening with Dylan's family, whatever came next, she was not alone. Her father had not seen her in 6 months. That had been Richard's rule when she got married. Give the young couple space. Let them build their own life. Do not interfere. Do not hover. Let Caroline make her own choices, her own mistakes, her own victories. But Caroline had just been publicly humiliated, her dress torn, her body exposed, her pregnancy mocked, and her husband had defended the person who did it. Richard Hayes was coming, and when her father arrived, Caroline knew everything was about to change. The nurse came back to check her vitals one more time. Your blood pressure is still elevated. We would like to keep you overnight for observation. Carolyn nodded. She could not imagine going back to the apartment right now anyway. Could not imagine sharing a bed with Dylan. Could not imagine pretending everything was normal. "Can I have some water?" she asked. The nurse brought her a plastic cup. Carolyn drank slowly, trying to calm her breathing, trying to stop the shaking that had taken over her entire body. Outside, she could hear the sounds of the hospital. Beeping machines, rushing footsteps, murmured conversations. Life continuing as if her world had not just tilted completely off its axis. She sat there in the quiet room, pretending to be asleep when Dylan came back. She could feel him standing in the doorway, could sense his presence. But she kept her eyes closed, her breathing even. She was not ready to talk to him, was not ready to hear more excuses. Eventually he left, probably to make more calls, to talk to his mother, to manage the situation. Caroline kept her eyes closed, kept pretending, and tried not to think about what happened next. Richard Hayes arrived exactly 20 minutes after his phone call. He moved through the hospital like a force of nature. Quiet, efficient, unstoppable. Within 30 minutes, Caroline had been moved to a private room. Within an hour, Dr. Morrison had been consulted again, and Caroline's overnight stay had been confirmed. Richard sat in the chair beside Caroline's bed and said nothing for a long time, just held her hand. "Tell me what happened," he finally said. So Caroline told him everything. The gala, Patricia offering to fix her dress, the deliberate tear, the cameras, Dylan's reaction, the hospital, the fight. All of it spilled out in a rush of words that she could not stop. Richard listened without interrupting. When Caroline finished, he asked just one question. "Do you want me to fix this?" Caroline looked at her father, at his carefully neutral expression, at the quiet fury barely visible in his eyes. She knew what he was offering, knew that Richard Hayes had the power, the money, the connections to make Patricia Morgan regret what she had done, could make the entire Morgan family regret it. "I do not know," Carolyn said honestly. "Part of me wants them to hurt the way I'm hurting, but another part just wants this to go away, wants to pretend it never happened." "It will not go away," Richard said gently. "The video has 4 million views now. It is on every news site, every social media platform. This is permanent, Carolyn." Carolyn felt her throat tighten again. "I know. So the question is not whether you want it to go away. The question is what you want to do about it." Before Caroline could answer, there was a knock at the door. Jessica pushed inside, her arms full of clothes and toiletries. "I brought you things from your apartment," Jessica said. "Dylan gave me the key. He is still downstairs making calls." "Thank you," Carolyn said. Jessica set the bags down and pulled out her phone. "You need to see this. Before you decide anything, you need to see what I recorded." She pulled up the video, not the viral one that showed the dress tearing. A different video. This one started earlier. Showed Patricia and Donna Fletcher positioning themselves near the floral arrangement. Showed Patricia watching Caroline move through the crowd. Showed the moment Patricia caught Caroline's eye, smiled, and gestured toward the loose thread on Caroline's dress. The video showed Patricia's hand deliberately catching the fabric on the sharp metal base of the flower stand. Showed the hard yank. Showed the smile that flickered across Patricia's face before she schooled it into false horror. Most damningly, the video showed Patricia winking at Donna Fletcher before she started screaming for help. Carolyn watched the video 3 times. Each time, her hands clenched tighter on the hospital blanket. This was not an accident. This was planned, choreographed, executed with precision. "Send that to me." "Stay," Richard said quietly. Jessica did. Within minutes, Richard's phone was buzzing with incoming calls from his legal team, his security team, his public relations team. He stepped out into the hallway to take the calls. "Are you okay?" Jessica asked, sitting on the edge of Caroline's bed. "No," Caroline said. "I am really not okay." "Good. You should not be okay. What Patricia did was evil." "Dylan thinks I am overreacting." "Dylan is an idiot." Caroline laughed despite herself. It came out more like a sob. "He is my husband. That does not mean he gets to gaslight you. Caroline, I have known you since we were 7 years old. I have watched you handle every challenge with grace and kindness. You have bent over backwards, trying to win Patricia's approval. And this is how she repays you? Maybe I was trying too hard. Maybe I made her feel threatened. Stop. Jessica grabbed Caroline's hand. You did nothing wrong. Patricia tore your dress because she is a bitter, jealous woman who cannot stand that her son married someone she considers above their family. That is her problem, not yours. Caroline wanted to believe that, wanted to accept that this was not somehow her fault. But years of Patricia's subtle digs, of Dylan's comments about her privilege, of trying to be normal had taken their toll. Maybe she was spoiled. Maybe she did think she was better than everyone. Maybe this was karma for being born rich. Richard came back into the room. His face was carefully blank, which meant he was furious. Carolyn had learned to read her father's expressions years ago. The blanker his face, the more dangerous his mood. My team has recovered security footage from the hotel, Richard said. Multiple angles. All of them show what Jessica's video shows. This was premeditated. What does that mean? Carolyn asked. It means Patricia Morgan planned to humiliate you in public while you are 7 months pregnant. That is not a drunken mistake. That is calculated cruelty. Carolyn felt something cold settle in her stomach. Why would she do that? I am going to find out, Richard said. Before Caroline could respond, her phone rang. It was her bank at 11:30 at night. Mrs. Morgan, the voice on the other end said, this is Sarah from First National Bank's fraud department. We have detected unusual activity on your trust fund account. Carolyn's blood went cold. What kind of unusual activity? Someone attempted to access your account from an unregistered device. The attempt was denied due to our security protocols, but we wanted to alert you immediately. Can you confirm your current location? I am at St. Mary's Hospital. I have been here for hours. And your husband? He is downstairs, in the waiting room, I think. Why? The access attempt originated from a residential address in Queens. We have traced the IP address. Would you like me to share that information with you? Carolyn felt her hands start shaking again. Yes. The woman on the phone read out an address. Carolyn recognized it immediately. It was Patricia and Victor Morgan's home. Someone had tried to access her trust fund from her in-laws' house tonight, while Caroline was in the hospital recovering from what they had done to her at the gala. This was not just humiliation. This was theft, or attempted theft. They had not just tried to embarrass her. They had tried to rob her. Caroline? Richard's voice cut through the roaring in her ears. What is it? Caroline handed him the phone, watched his face as he spoke to the bank representative, watched his expression shift from blank to something much darker and much more dangerous. When he hung up, Richard looked at his daughter for a long moment. Now we know why, he said quietly. They were not trying to humiliate you for fun. They were trying to paint you as unstable, unfit, so they could contest your prenatal trust for the baby. They were trying to steal from you, Carolyn. And when that did not work, they decided to destroy your credibility instead. Caroline felt like she could not breathe. 7 months pregnant, sitting in a hospital bed, wearing a borrowed coat because her mother-in-law had torn her dress. And now this. They had tried to steal from her, had tried to access her money, had tried to set her up. What I did not know, Carolyn said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else, was that my father was not planning revenge. He was planning annihilation. Richard Hayes smiled. It was not a nice smile. Get some rest, he said. This will be handled. Carolyn woke to sunlight streaming through the hospital window and the sound of raised voices in the hallway. She recognized one of them immediately. Dylan, you cannot just kick me out. That is my wife in there. Mrs. Morgan has requested no visitors except those on her approved list. The nurse's voice was firm. You are not on that list. Carolyn sat up slowly. Her body ached from a night of restless sleep. Her mind felt foggy and thick. She reached for her phone. 6 missed calls from Dylan, 12 from Patricia, 4 from numbers she did not recognize. She ignored all of them and called Jessica instead. How are you feeling? Jessica asked immediately. Like I got hit by a truck. What time is it? Almost noon. Your father had you moved to a private wing. Dylan has been trying to get in for hours. Good. Carolyn surprised herself with how little guilt she felt about that. Can you come get me? Dr. Morrison is releasing me today, but I do not want to go back to the apartment. Already on my way. Your father has a car waiting downstairs too. We are taking you to the estate. Dylan will lose his mind. Let him. An hour later, Caroline was dressed in the clothes Jessica had brought, soft leggings, an oversized sweater that accommodated her belly, comfortable shoes. She looked nothing like the woman who had walked into the gala last night in her emerald gown and diamond earrings. She looked tired, worn, but somehow also more herself than she had in months. Richard was waiting by the private elevator when Caroline and Jessica emerged. He kissed his daughter's forehead and said nothing about the dark circles under her eyes or the way her hands still trembled slightly when she thought no one was looking. They took the service exit to avoid reporters. Because there were reporters now. Cameras, questions shouted from across the parking lot. Caroline kept her head down and let her father shield her from view. The car ride to the Hayes estate was quiet. Richard worked on his phone. Jessica held Caroline's hand, and Caroline stared out the window, watching the city give way to suburbs, then to the tree-lined streets of the exclusive neighborhood where she had grown up. The estate looked exactly as she remembered. Sprawling, beautiful, safe. Her childhood bedroom was unchanged. Her father had kept it exactly as she had left it when she moved in with Dylan 2 years ago. Caroline stood in the doorway, looking at her old bar, her old desk, the photographs on the wall of a younger, happier version of herself. Before marriage, before pregnancy, before she learned that love could be weaponized by people who were supposed to care about you. I will be downstairs if you need me, Richard said quietly. Dad? Carolyn turned to face him. What are you going to do? What I should have done 2 years ago when you told me Patricia was making comments about you being a gold digger. I am going to protect my daughter. I do not want you to destroy them. I know. Richard's expression softened slightly, but I am going to show them that there are consequences for attacking my family. That is non-negotiable. He left before Caroline could argue. She heard his footsteps echo down the hallway, heard the distant sound of his office door closing, heard the house settle into its usual quiet rhythm. Jessica helped her unpack the few things they had brought. Do you want to talk about it? Not yet, Caroline said. I need to think. I need to figure out what I am going to say to Dylan. As if summoned by his name, Caroline's phone rang. Dylan again. She let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message he left. Caroline, please, just talk to me. I know you are at your father's house. I know you are upset, but running away is not the answer. We need to deal with this together, as a family. My parents want to apologize. They feel terrible about what happened. Please just call me back. The message made Caroline feel nothing. No guilt, no sadness, just a bone-deep exhaustion at having to explain to her husband why his parents trying to steal from her was not something that could be fixed with an apology. She deleted the message and turned off her phone. Outside her window, she could see the treehouse her father had built when she was 8. She had not been up there in years, had not thought about it in months. But suddenly, she wanted nothing more than to climb those old wooden boards and sit in the small space where she had felt safe as a child. The climb was harder 7 months pregnant. Jessica called her insane. Carolyn did not care. She needed this, needed to be somewhere that belonged entirely to her. Somewhere Patricia had never been. Somewhere Dylan had never asked about. Somewhere that existed before everything got so complicated. The treehouse smelled like old wood in childhood, like summers reading books in the shade, like afternoons hiding from the world, like a time when the biggest crisis in her life was a bad grade or a fight with a friend. Carolyn sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her hands on her belly. The baby kicked, strong, insistent, real. I wanted so badly to be normal, Carolyn whispered to her daughter, to prove I was not just daddy's money. So I married someone who resented me for it, and I pretended not to notice. The baby kicked again, as if to say, I am listening. Your grandmother Patricia tore my dress in front of 300 people. She tried to steal from my trust fund. She is planning something worse. I can feel it. And your father defended her. He made excuses. He told me I was overreacting. Another kick. So here's what I need to know. Carolyn's voice cracked. Am I doing the right thing by coming here? By letting your grandfather fix this? Or am I just proving Patricia right? That I am spoiled and entitled and I run to daddy the second things get hard? The baby did not answer. Could not answer. But Caroline felt the steady rhythm of kicks, the strong proof of life inside her, and something settled in her chest. She was not spoiled for having a father who loved her. She was not entitled for expecting her husband to defend her. She was not overreacting to attempted theft and public humiliation. She was just tired. Tired of apologizing for who she was. Tired of making herself smaller to make other people comfortable. Tired of explaining away cruelty as misunderstanding. The hardest part, Caroline realized, was admitting she had known all along. Every warning sign, every red flag, every moment when Patricia had shown exactly who she was. Carolyn had explained it all away, had convinced herself it would get better, that if she just tried harder, was kinder, was more understanding, Patricia would eventually accept her. But Patricia did not want acceptance. She wanted surrender. She wanted Caroline broken and grateful and small. She wanted her son's wife to know her place. And when Caroline refused to play that role, Patricia decided to force the issue. Caroline climbed down from the treehouse as the sun started to set. Jessica was waiting at the bottom. Feel better? Jessica asked. No, Caroline said honestly, but I know what I need to do. What is that? Stop apologizing, stop explaining, stop defending myself to people who have already decided I am guilty. Jessica smiled. About damn time. They walked back to the house together. Richard was in his study, on the phone with someone Caroline did not recognize. She caught fragments of the conversation. Financial records, legal documentation, security protocols. Her father was doing what he did best, protecting his assets. And right now, Caroline was the asset under attack. She should have felt grateful, should have felt relieved. Instead, she just felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that her husband's family hated her so much. Sad that her marriage was falling apart before her daughter was even born. But underneath the sadness was something else. Something harder. Something that felt almost like anger. It was not the hot, explosive kind. It was cold, calculating, determined. Patricia Morgan had made a mistake. She had attacked a pregnant woman. She had humiliated her publicly. She had tried to steal from her. And then she had assumed Caroline would just accept it, would forgive it, would move on because that was what nice girls did. Patricia had forgotten that Caroline Hayes was Richard Hayes' daughter, and Richard Hayes did not raise his daughter to be a victim. The first domino fell the next morning. Victor Morgan was fired from his job of 23 years. The official reason was restructuring. The real reason was that Richard Hayes sat on the board of the parent company. Caroline did not know this yet, would not know for several more days. But the war had begun, and her father played to win. Dylan showed up at the estate on the third day. Caroline was in the garden, reading in the afternoon sun, when she heard his voice at the front door. Heard him arguing with the housekeeper. Heard Richard's calm, cold voice telling him that Caroline would decide when she was ready to see him. She was not ready, but she was also tired of hiding. It is okay, Caroline called from the garden. He can come in. Dylan appeared a moment later looking exhausted. His hair was messy. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were red-rimmed. He looked like he had not slept in days. Caroline. He stopped a few feet away, as if unsure whether he was allowed to come closer. I have been trying to reach you for 3 days. I know. Why would you not answer my calls? Why would you not let me see you at the hospital? You are my wife. You are carrying my child. Am I? The question came out sharper than Caroline intended. Because from where I am sitting, it seems like I am Patricia's victim and your inconvenience. Dylan flinched. That is not fair. What part is not fair? The part where your mother tore my dress in front of 300 people? Or the part where you defended her? Or maybe the part where someone tried to access my trust fund from your parents' house? Dylan went pale. What? You did not know? Carolyn studied his face carefully. He looked genuinely shocked. Someone tried to steal from me, Dylan, from our daughter's trust, and the attempt came from your parents' computer. That is impossible. They would not. Dylan stopped, his face crumbling. Jesus, what did they do? Why do you not ask them? I did. Dylan sank onto the garden bench across from Carolyn. My father called me this morning. He got fired yesterday. After 23 years with the same company, they suddenly decided to restructure. He is convinced your father is behind it. And is he wrong? I do not know. Is he? Carolyn said nothing. She did not know for certain. Her father had not told her what he was doing, had only promised to handle it. But she knew Richard Hayes well enough to guess. Her father did not make idle threats. If he said there would be consequences, there would be consequences. Caroline, please, Dylan's voice cracked. You have to understand. My parents are scared. They think you and your father are trying to cut them out of the baby's life. They think you look down on them. They think they tried to steal from me, Dylan. I know it looks bad, but maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they were just trying to check on the account, to make sure you were okay. Caroline stared at her husband. You do not actually believe that. I do not know what I believe anymore. Dylan put his head in his hands. My father lost his job. My mother has been crying for 3 days. They are going to lose their house if Dad cannot find work. And everyone is blaming me, saying I should control my wife, should talk to your father, should fix this. Fix what exactly? Fix the fact that your mother humiliated me? Or fix the fact that they tried to steal from me? They did not steal. They failed. No money was taken. So attempted theft is fine as long as they do not succeed? That is not what I meant. Dylan looked up at her, his eyes pleading. Caroline, I love you. I love our daughter, but this is destroying my family. Can you not ask your father to stop? Whatever he is doing, can you not just make him stop? Carolyn felt something inside her go very still, very quiet, very cold. Do you believe it was an accident? She asked. The dress at the gala. Do you honestly believe your mother did not mean to tear it? Dylan hesitated. It was only 3 seconds. 3 seconds of silence. But it was enough. You knew, Carolyn said softly, not about the gala specifically, but you knew they were planning something. No, I did not know. Dylan's face crumpled. They mentioned that you needed to be humbled, that you were getting too confident, that you needed to understand we are not your servants. But I did not think they would actually do anything. I just thought they were venting. Carolyn felt the anger rise. Not hot, not explosive, just ice-cold clarity. Your parents told you they wanted to humble me, and you did not warn me. You did not defend me. You just let it happen. I did not let anything happen. I did not know what they were planning. But you knew they were planning something, and you said nothing. Carolyn, get out. What? Get out of my father's house. Get out of my sight. Get out of my life until you can figure out whose side you are on. There are no sides. We are family. No, Dylan, your parents are family. I am the woman you married and then abandoned the second things got difficult. Now get out. Dylan stood slowly. He looked like he wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but something in Caroline's face must have told him it was pointless. I love you, he said quietly. Then you should have protected me. He left. Caroline sat in the garden, her hands on her belly, and tried not to cry. She was done crying, done apologizing, done explaining herself to people who had already made up their minds. That evening, attorney Graham Foster arrived at the estate. He was a tall man in his early 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. He had been Richard's lawyer for 30 years. He was also the most ruthless legal mind on the East Coast. Mrs. Morgan, Graham said, spreading documents across the dining room table, your father has asked me to brief you on what we have discovered. Carolyn sat down across from him. Richard sat at the head of the table. Jessica sat beside Carolyn, her hand on her friend's shoulder. The Morgans have been embezzling from your husband for 3 years, Graham said without preamble. Small amounts at first, 300 here, 500 there. But over time, they have taken approximately $63,000 from Dylan's accounts. Carolyn felt her stomach drop. How? They had access to his accounts from when he was younger. He apparently never changed the passwords or removed their names after he turned 18. They have been using his information to open credit cards, take out loans, and transfer funds. Does Dylan know? Not yet. I thought you should be the one to tell him. Graham pulled out another set of documents. These were legal papers, custody arrangements, grandparents' rights petitions, all prepared in advance, all ready to file the moment Caroline's daughter was born. They were building a case, Graham said, documenting every perceived mistake you have made. Your morning sickness was noted as inability to care for yourself. Your decision to continue working was framed as prioritizing career over your unborn child. Your prenatal yoga classes were characterized as New Age indoctrination. Caroline felt sick. They were going to try to take my baby. They were going to try, Graham corrected. Whether they would have succeeded is another matter. But yes, that appears to have been their plan. Richard leaned forward. I want you to understand something, Caroline. This was not spontaneous. This was not your mother-in-law having too much wine and making a mistake. This was a calculated, long-term campaign to undermine you, to paint you as unfit, to position themselves to take custody of your child. Why? Caroline's voice cracked. Why would they do this? Money, Bowen, Graham said bluntly. Your daughter's trust fund is worth $40 million. If they could prove you were unfit and Dylan was unable to care for her alone, they could petition for custody, and control of that trust fund would go to whoever had custody. Caroline felt like she could not breathe. They did not hate her because she was rich. They hated her because she would not let them steal from her daughter. I thought the worst was over, Caroline said quietly. And then I found out what they had planned for my baby. Richard's hand covered hers. It is over now. They will not get near your daughter. I promise you that. But Caroline was not thinking about her father's promises. She was thinking about Dylan, about the man she had married, about whether he had known, whether he had been part of this. She needed to know, even if the answer destroyed her. I need to see Dylan, Caroline said, tonight. I need to ask him if he knew about the custody plan. Are you sure? Jessica asked gently. You do not have to do this now. Yes, I do, because if he knew, if he was part of this, then my marriage is over, and I need to know that before my daughter is born. Richard nodded. I will have him brought here. Not here, Caroline said. At the apartment. I need to see him in our space. I need to see his face when I ask him. An hour later, Caroline stood in the apartment she had shared with Dylan for 2 years. It felt foreign now, like a museum of someone else's life. There were pictures on the walls of happier times. Caroline and Dylan at their wedding, on vacation in Italy, at the hospital when they found out about the baby. That girl in the photographs looked so happy, so naive, so certain that love was enough. Dylan arrived 20 minutes later. He looked surprised to see Caroline standing in their living room. You came home, he said. No, Caroline replied. I came to get answers. Dylan's face shifted from surprise to wariness. What answers? Caroline pulled out the documents Graham Foster had given her, spread them across the coffee table, watched Dylan's face as he recognized what he was seeing. Did you know? Caroline asked. Dylan went pale. He picked up the custody petition, read through it slowly. His hands started shaking. No, he said finally. I did not know about this. But you knew they were documenting things. You knew they thought I was unfit. They mentioned concerns about your stress levels, about whether you were ready for motherhood. But I thought they were just worried. I did not know they were building a legal case. Carolyn watched his face carefully, looking for the lie. But Dylan looked genuinely devastated, genuinely shocked, unless he was a better actor than she thought. Your parents have been stealing from you for 3 years, Carolyn said. Did you know about that? Dylan's head snapped up. What? They have been taking money from your accounts, $63,000 over 3 years, using your information to open credit cards. Graham Foster has all the documentation. Dylan sat down heavily on the couch. That is why Mom kept asking for my passwords. She said she wanted to help me organize my finances. I thought she was just being helpful. She was stealing from you, Dylan, from us. And when they could not steal from me directly, they decided to take my daughter instead. Our daughter. Dylan's voice was sharp. She is our daughter, Carolyn. Is she? Because from where I am sitting, your parents tried to steal money from her trust fund. They tried to build a case to take custody. They tore my dress at a gala to make me look unstable, and you did nothing to stop any of it. I did not know. You knew enough. You knew they resented me. You knew they wanted to humble me. You knew they were planning something, but you said nothing. You did nothing. You let them humiliate me because you thought I needed to be taken down a peg. Dylan's face crumpled. That is not fair. Is it not? Carolyn's voice rose. You told them I was too confident, that I needed to understand you were not my servants. Those were your words, Dylan. Jessica's friend heard you at the gala, before the dress. You told your mother I needed to see I was not perfect. Dylan went very still. I did not mean it like that. How did you mean it then? Explain it to me. Make me understand how telling your mother I needed to be humbled is not giving her permission to tear my dress in front of 300 people. I just meant, Dylan stopped, started again. You have your father's money. You have never had to worry about anything. I just wanted you to understand that the rest of us do not have that luxury, that my parents worked their entire lives to give me opportunities, that they deserve respect even if they do not have your father's wealth. I have always respected your parents, Carolyn said quietly, until they proved they did not deserve it. They were scared, scared of losing me, scared that you would take our daughter and cut them out completely. People do crazy things when they are scared. Carolyn stared at her husband, at the man she had loved, the man she had married, the man who was still making excuses for people who had tried to steal from their child. You are right, Caroline said finally. People do crazy things when they are scared, like marrying someone who resents them, like ignoring every red flag because you want so badly to believe in love, like convincing yourself that if you just try harder, be kinder, be more understanding, that eventually people will accept you. Carolyn, you wanted me small, Carolyn continued. Her voice was steady now, cold, clear. You wanted me grateful. You married me because of who my father was, then resented me for it every single day of our marriage. You wanted the money, the connections, the status, but you did not want the woman who came with it. That is not love, Dylan. That is ownership. Dylan's eyes filled with tears. I do love you. No, you love the idea of me. You love what I represent, what I can give you. But you do not love me, because if you loved me, you would have protected me, and you did not. Carolyn picked up her bag. She had not unpacked it, had not planned to stay, had only come to ask the question that had been burning in her chest since Graham Foster showed her those documents. I am filing for divorce, Carolyn said. What? No, Caroline, please. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can work through this. The prison door was unlocked all along, Caroline said softly. I was my own warden. She walked out of the apartment, left her keys on the counter, left her husband on the couch, left 2 years of marriage and all the hope and love and effort she had poured into it. In the car, Jessica was waiting. How did it go? He knew, Carolyn had said, not all of it, but enough. He knew they wanted to humble me, and he let it happen. Jessica pulled Caroline into a hug, let her friend cry on her shoulder, did not offer platitudes or false comfort, just held her while the last pieces of Caroline's marriage shattered. I keep thinking about that moment at the gala, Caroline said between sobs. When my dress tore, do you know what I felt? What? Relief. For just 1 second before the horror set in, I felt relief. Because I finally had proof. I finally had evidence that I was not crazy, that Patricia really did hate me, that I was not imagining it. And that relief is almost worse than the humiliation, because it means some part of me knew all along, and I stayed anyway. Jessica pulled back to look at Caroline's face. You are not crazy. You are not imagining things. And you are not stupid for wanting your marriage to work. You are human. And you are allowed to grieve the marriage you thought you had, even if it was never real. Carolyn nodded, tried to believe it, tried to accept that she had done nothing wrong, that wanting to be loved did not make her weak, that trusting her husband did not make her foolish. But the guilt was still there, the shame, the nagging voice that said if she had just been different, been better, been more, maybe none of this would have happened. They drove back to the estate in silence. Carolyn stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past, and tried to imagine a future that did not include Dylan, that did not include trying to win Patricia's approval, that did not include making herself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of who she should be. She could not quite picture it yet, but she could feel it, like a door opening, like fresh air after being in a stuffy room for too long, like possibility. At the estate, Richard was waiting in the library. He took one look at Caroline's face and opened his arms. She walked into her father's embrace and let herself be held like she was 7 years old again. Like her biggest problem was a scraped knee or a bad grade. Like the world was safe and fair and made sense. "It is done," Caroline whispered. "My marriage is over." "I know," Richard said gently. "And I am sorry. I know you wanted it to work." "I did. But wanting something does not make it real." "No, it doesn't." They stood there for a long time, father and daughter, the way they had stood countless times before. Through her mother's death, through middle school bullying, through every heartbreak and disappointment and loss. But this was different. This was not childhood pain that would fade with time. This was adult grief, complex and messy and permanent. This was the end of a dream, the death of a future she had imagined. Carolyn pulled back finally, wiped her eyes, tried to smile. "What happens now?" "Now, Baruchel," Richard said, "we finish what they started. We make sure your daughter is protected. We make sure Patricia and Victor cannot hurt you again. And we show Dylan exactly what he lost. I do not want revenge. I know, but you deserve justice. And so does my granddaughter." Carolyn nodded. She was too tired to argue. Too tired to think about legal battles and custody arrangements and how to divide a life she had thought would last forever. Her friend from prenatal yoga had mentioned Patricia was asking questions about grandparents' rights, about custody and messy divorces. Caroline's blood had gone cold at the time. Now it just made her angry. Patricia had not just attacked Caroline, she had threatened her unborn child, and that was unforgivable. "Okay," Caroline said finally. "Do what needs to be done." Richard smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had built an empire from nothing, who had crushed competitors, who had won battles that others thought were unwinnable. Patricia Morgan had made a terrible mistake. She had forgotten that Richard Hayes protected what was his, and his daughter and granddaughter were his most precious possessions. The war Patricia had started was about to end, and she would not like how it finished. 3 days after Caroline filed for divorce, she hit rock bottom. It happened at 2 in the morning. Richard was asleep. Jessica had gone home to her own family. The nurse Richard had hired to monitor Caroline's blood pressure was off for the night. Caroline was alone in the nursery. She had been slowly preparing for her daughter's arrival. The room was almost finished. Pale yellow walls, white furniture, a mobile with moons and stars hanging above the crib, tiny clothes folded in drawers, books stacked on shelves, everything ready for a baby who would grow up in a broken home. Carolyn sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her hands on her belly. The baby kicked, strong, insistent movements that seemed to say, "I am here, I am real, I am coming, whether you are ready or not." "I am scared," Carolyn whispered to her daughter. "I am so scared that I am going to fail you, that I am going to break you the way this has broken me." The baby kicked again. Caroline's phone sat beside her on the floor. She picked it up, scrolled through her contacts, stopped at a number she had not called in 7 years, a number that had been disconnected for almost as long. Her mother's phone. Margaret Hayes had died when Caroline was 21. A sudden stroke, gone before anyone could say goodbye, before Caroline could tell her about college, about her dreams, about the man she thought she might marry someday. That man had not been Dylan. That man had been someone else entirely. Someone Caroline had loved and lost before she ever met Dylan. Someone who had shown her what real love looked like before life got complicated. Caroline dialed her mother's number, listened to the generic message that the number was no longer in service, and then she talked anyway. "Mom," Caroline said, her voice cracking, "I really messed up. I married someone who did not love me. Not really, and I knew it. I think I knew it from the beginning. But I wanted so badly to prove to you and Dad that I was not spoiled, that I did not need money or status, that I could be normal." Tears streamed down Caroline's face. So I picked someone who made me feel small, who made me feel like I needed to apologize for who I was. And I convinced myself that was love. That was real. That was what normal people did. The baby kicked harder, as if to say, keep talking. And now I am about to have a baby, your granddaughter, and I am terrified that I am so broken from this that I will break her too. What if I cannot protect her? What if I make the same mistakes? What if I teach her that love is supposed to hurt? Carolyn pressed her hand harder against her belly. What if the best thing I can do for her is disappear? What if she would be better off without me? The thought hung in the air, dark and terrible and seductive in its simplicity. What if running away was the answer? What if her daughter deserved better than a mother who was this damaged? Carolyn? Carolyn looked up. Richard stood in the doorway of the nursery. He was in his pajamas, his hair mussed from sleep. He must have heard her crying, must have come to check on her. Dad, Carolyn said, I did not mean to wake you. Richard crossed the room slowly, sat down beside his daughter on the floor, said nothing for a long moment, just sat there with her in the quiet nursery, surrounded by the evidence of hope for a future Caroline could no longer imagine. Your mother went through something similar with my family, Richard said finally. Caroline looked at her father. What? When we got engaged, my parents thought she was a gold digger. They were old money, very concerned about bloodlines and proper breeding and all that nonsense. Margaret was a teacher from a middle-class family. They thought she was beneath us. I did not know that. I did not tell you. Your mother did not like to talk about it. But they did things to her. Small things at first, snide comments, deliberate exclusions. Then bigger things. They spread rumors about her, tried to make her look unstable, even suggested she was only marrying me for money. Caroline felt something shift in her chest. What did she do? She built a fortress, Richard said. She decided that she could not control what they did or said, but she could control her response. So she created boundaries so strong that their attacks bounced off. She refused to engage, refused to defend herself, just lived her life and let them exhaust themselves trying to tear her down. Did it work? Eventually, they realized they could not break her, could not make her small, could not force her to surrender. So they gave up, accepted that if they wanted to be part of my life, they had to accept her, on her terms. Richard turned to look at his daughter. You are more like your mother than you know. You have her kindness, her grace, her strength, but you also have something she did not have. What is that? You have me, and I am not going to let Patricia and Victor Morgan break you. I am going to show them exactly what happens when they attack my family. Carolyn leaned her head on her father's shoulder. I am scared I am going to be a terrible mother. You are going to be an amazing mother, just like Margaret was. You are already protecting your daughter, already making hard choices to keep her safe. That is what good mothers do. What if that is not enough? It will be, because you are not doing this alone. You have me, you have Jessica, you have doctors and lawyers and an entire support system. Your daughter is going to grow up loved and protected and cherished. That is what matters. They sat there for a long time. Carolyn's breathing slowly calmed. The panic that had been clawing at her chest loosened its grip. The dark thoughts receded. She was not going to disappear, was not going to give up, was not going to let Patricia win. Eventually, Richard stood, helped Caroline to her feet. Come on, let me make you some of your mother's cookies. It is 2 in the morning. Best time for baking. No one to judge if we burn the first batch. They went to the kitchen. Richard pulled out flour, sugar, chocolate chips. Carolyn measured ingredients while her father preheated the oven. They worked in comfortable silence, the ritual of baking soothing in a way words could not be. The first batch did burn. They laughed and made another. The kitchen filled with the smell of chocolate and butter and home, the smell of Caroline's childhood, of her mother, of safety. Mom's story changed everything, Caroline said as they waited for the second batch to finish. Not because it gave me answers, because it gave me permission. Permission for what? Permission to stop apologizing. Stop trying to prove I am worthy. Stop making myself small. Mom did not fix your family. She just built a life so good they could not touch her. Richard smiled. Exactly. The cookies came out perfect this time. They sat at the kitchen table, eating warm chocolate chip cookies at 3 in the morning. And Caroline felt something inside her heal. Not all the way, not completely, but enough. She was not going to be defined by what Patricia had done to her, was not going to let this trauma be the story she told her daughter, was going to build a life so good that the gala was just a footnote, a bad memory that faded with time. Starting over feels impossible, Caroline said quietly, but staying in this toxicity feels worse. My daughter deserves better. She does, Richard agreed, and so do you. Carolyn nodded, ate another cookie, let herself be 7 months pregnant and exhausted and heartbroken and hopeful all at once. Let herself be complicated and messy and human. The nursery could be finished tomorrow. The divorce papers could be filed next week. The future could be figured out one day at a time. Tonight, she just needed to breathe, to exist, to remember that she was strong enough to survive this. Her mother had survived it, had built a fortress against people who wanted to break her, had raised a daughter who was kind and strong and worthy of love. Carolyn could do the same, would do the same, for her daughter, for herself, for the future that waited on the other side of this grief. She just had to survive long enough to see it. 1 week later, Caroline sat in her father's office while Graham Foster laid out what Richard had been quietly orchestrating. The systematic dismantling of Patricia and Victor Morgan's lives was not revenge. Richard insisted on calling it consequence. Caroline was not sure there was a difference. The dominoes are falling in sequence, Graham said, pulling up documents on his tablet. Victor Morgan's termination led to mortgage default. They have 60 days to find a new income source or they lose the house. Carolyn felt a flicker of something. Not quite guilt, not quite satisfaction. Something uncomfortably in between. Graham continued. Patricia's incident at the country club went viral. She confronted Richard's college roommate, demanded he reverse Victor's firing. When he refused, she became physical. Security had to remove her. Someone filmed the entire encounter. He played the video. Caroline watched Patricia screaming, mascara running, champagne glass still in hand. Watched her shove an elderly man. Watched security guards escort her out while she shouted obscenities. It was not pretty. It was also not surprising. Patricia, drunk and entitled and furious, was Patricia at her most honest. The video has 3 million views, Graham said. The country club revoked her membership this morning. Several of her friends have publicly distanced themselves. She is essentially a social pariah now. What about the trust fund attempt? Carolyn asked. That triggered an FBI investigation for fraud. They are looking into Patricia and Victor's financial records going back 10 years. The identity theft charges related to Dylan's stolen money are also moving forward. Victor could face prison time. Caroline put her hand on her belly. The baby was quieter today, as if sensing her mother's anxiety. And the custody plot? Caroline asked. We leaked the documents to Claudia Rothwell. She published a full expose this morning, with receipts, screenshots of Patricia's anonymous hate posts about you, financial records showing the attempted access to your trust, the grandparents' rights petition, everything. Graham pulled up the article on his tablet. Caroline read the headline. Gala humiliation was just the beginning. How one mother-in-law's jealousy became a criminal conspiracy. The article was devastating, thorough, damning. It laid out Patricia's campaign against Caroline in brutal detail, showed the progression from snide comments to public humiliation to attempted theft to custody conspiracy. The public that had mocked Caroline a week ago was now rallying around her. The comments section was full of support. Outrage at Patricia, sympathy for Caroline, disgust at Dylan for not protecting his wife. The narrative has shifted entirely, Graham said. You are no longer the spoiled rich girl who got what she deserved. You are the victim of a vicious, calculating attack by people who tried to steal from your unborn child. Carolyn should have felt vindicated, should have felt satisfied. Instead, she just felt tired. What about Dylan, she asked. He filed a police report against his parents for the identity theft. He is cooperating with the investigation. He also released a statement condemning their actions and supporting the divorce. Caroline pulled up Dylan's statement on her phone. Read his carefully worded apology, his condemnation of his parents, his promise to be the father their daughter deserved. It all sounded good. It also sounded like it was written by a public relations team. He called me 12 times yesterday, Carolyn said, left voicemails begging me to ask Dad to stop, saying his parents are losing everything, saying his mother is having a breakdown. And Richard spoke for the first time since the meeting started. And nothing. I did not call him back. Good. Caroline looked at her father. People are going to say, we destroyed them, that the punishment does not fit the crime. The punishment fits perfectly, Richard said coldly. They tried to steal from my granddaughter. They tried to take custody of her. They publicly humiliated you while you were pregnant. These are not the actions of people who deserve mercy. But Dylan is suffering too. He lost his parents, his mom, his wife, everything. Dylan made his choice when he told his mother, you needed to be humbled. He is reaping what he sowed. Carolyn knew her father was right, knew Dylan had been complicit even if he had not known the full extent of his parents' plans. But she also knew her daughter would grow up without her father in her life, would see these articles someday, would know her grandparents went to prison because of choices they made before she was even born. That legacy felt heavy, complicated, sad in ways Caroline had not anticipated. I did not ask him to start, Caroline said finally. I did not ask him to stop. This is not my father's revenge. This is consequence. They tried to steal my money, my dignity, and my child. These are the natural results of those choices. Graham nodded approvingly. Richard smiled. They were satisfied with her answer, with her cold, clear acceptance of what was happening. But Caroline felt something else, something that felt almost like loss. Not for Patricia and Victor, not even really for Dylan, but for the version of herself who had believed love was enough, who had thought kindness and patience could change people, who had wanted so desperately to be normal that she had accepted cruelty as the price. That version of Caroline was gone, dead, buried beneath layers of humiliation and betrayal and hard-won wisdom. The new Caroline was harder, colder, more careful. She would protect her daughter with the ruthlessness her father showed, would build boundaries so strong no one could breach them, would never again make herself small for someone else's comfort. It was growth, it was survival, it was necessary. It was also sad. There is one more thing, Graham said carefully. Dylan's brother Trevor has requested a meeting with you. Caroline looked up sharply. Why? He says he has information you need to hear, about Dylan, about what Dylan knew and when he knew it. Carolyn's stomach dropped. I already know Dylan knew they wanted to humble me. Trevor says there is more, texts, conversations, evidence that Dylan was more involved than he admitted. No, the word came out sharper than Caroline intended. No, I do not want to know. Whatever it is, it does not matter anymore. The marriage is over. The divorce is proceeding. I do not need more reasons to hate my daughter's father. You are sure? Richard asked. I am sure. Some truths do not need to be spoken. Some doors do not need to be opened. I know enough. But even as she said it, Caroline felt a curiosity gnaw at her. What had Dylan known? How complicit had he been? Had he actively participated in planning her humiliation or just allowed it to happen? The not knowing would haunt her, but the knowing might destroy her. So she chose ignorance, chose to believe Dylan had been weak rather than malicious, chose to give him the benefit of a doubt he probably did not deserve, for her daughter's sake, for her own sanity, for the version of the future where her child could love her father without feeling guilty. The meeting ended. Graham left. Richard went back to his calls. Carolyn sat alone in the office, scrolling through the article about her life, and tried to reconcile the woman in those paragraphs with the woman she saw in the mirror. Victim, survivor, fighter, fool. All of it was true. None of it was complete. She was just Caroline, 7 months pregnant, getting divorced, watching her father systematically destroy the people who had attacked her, trying to build a future from the wreckage of her past. It was not the story she would have chosen, but it was the story she had. And she was learning to accept that some stories did not have happy endings. They just had endings. And sometimes that had to be enough. Outside the window, she could see the garden where she had confronted Dylan. The tree house where she had climbed, pregnant and desperate. The estate that had always been her safety net. She was lucky. Lucky to have a father who loved her. Lucky to have resources most people could only dream of. Lucky to have options. Patricia would say that made her spoiled. That made her entitled. That made her less than. But Caroline was learning a different lesson. Having a father who loved you was not spoiled. It was privilege. And privilege was not something to apologize for. It was something to use, to protect yourself, to build the life you deserved. Her phone buzzed. Trevor Scott. Again. He had been calling for days, leaving messages, saying he needed to talk to her, that she deserved to know the truth. Caroline stared at the phone, finger hovering over the decline button, wavering. Then she answered. Trevor. Carolyn, thank you for taking my call. I know you did not want to hear this, but you need to know. Dylan knew about the gala. He helped them plan it. And just like that, Caroline's carefully constructed ignorance shattered. The door she had tried to keep closed burst open, and the truth poured in, cold and brutal and undeniable. Trevor Scott sat across from Caroline in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the estate. Neutral territory, public enough to feel safe, private enough to have the conversation no one wanted to have. I brought texts, Trevor said, sliding his phone across the table. From Dylan to our mother. I debated showing you. Thought maybe it was kinder to let you believe he was just weak, but you deserve to know. Carolyn looked at the phone, at the messages from her husband to his mother. Messages sent weeks before the gala. Her hands trembled as she picked up the device and started reading. Dylan to Patricia. She has been too confident lately, acting like she is better than all of us. Patricia to Dylan. That is what happens when girls grow up with everything handed to them. Dylan to Patricia. I just want her to understand we are not her servants, that my family deserves respect even if we do not have her money. Patricia to Dylan. She needs a reality check, something to remind her she is not perfect. Dylan to Patricia. Agreed. Maybe at the gala? Let her make a fool of herself in front of her father's friends. Patricia to Dylan. Leave it to me, but you cannot defend her when it happens. You have to let her sit with it. Let her understand what it feels like to be the one everyone is laughing at. Dylan to Patricia. I can do that. Carolyn felt her vision blur. She scrolled further, found more messages. Dylan to Patricia. Did you see her face when the dress tore? She looked so shocked. Patricia to Dylan. Perfect. Now we just need to keep the pressure on. Make her so stressed that Richard sees she cannot handle motherhood. Dylan to Patricia. What about the trust fund? Patricia to Dylan. Working on it. If we can show she is unstable, we can contest custody. Get access to the baby's money. Dylan to Patricia. I do not know if I am comfortable with that part. Patricia to Dylan. You want your daughter to grow up poor? Because without that trust, that is exactly what will happen. Your salary cannot support a child in Caroline's lifestyle. Dylan to Patricia. Fine, do what you need to do. Carolyn set the phone down carefully. Her hands were shaking so badly she was afraid she would drop it. There is more, Trevor said quietly. Messages about the custody case, about documenting her mistakes, about making sure Richard saw her as an unfit mother. Dylan was not an innocent bystander, Caroline. He was an active participant. Why are you telling me this? Caroline's voice was barely a whisper. Because you deserve better. Because my brother is a coward and a liar. Because you are about to have a baby and you need to know exactly who you are dealing with. You are his brother. I am, and I love him. But I also know what he did was unforgivable. He did not marry you because he loved you. He married you because he was tired of being poor, tired of being looked down on. He thought marrying Richard Hayes' daughter would fix that, would make him somebody. Trevor's voice was gentle but firm. And when it did not work the way he imagined, when you were still yourself instead of some trophy he could parade around, he decided you needed to be broken down, made small, made grateful. Carolyn felt tears streaming down her face. I thought he loved me. Maybe he did, in his own twisted way, but he loved your father's money more, and he resented you for having what he could not. That is not love, Carolyn. That is but a man wearing a mask. She wanted to argue, wanted to defend the man she had married, but the texts were right there, undeniable, damning. Dylan had known, had helped plan her humiliation, had actively participated in trying to make her look unstable. The man she had loved did not exist, had never existed. She had married an illusion, a performance, a carefully crafted image designed to get close to her father's money. "I need to go," Carolyn said, standing abruptly. "Carolyn, wait." But she was already walking away, out of the coffee shop, down the street, moving without thinking. Just moving because if she stopped, she would fall apart, and she could not fall apart in public. Not again, not after the gala. She made it to her car before the panic attack hit, sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe. In through the pen, out through the mouth, count to 4, count to 8. The techniques Dr. Morrison had taught her for managing stress. They were not working. Carolyn drove. Not back to the estate, not to the apartment, just drove. Let the city blur past. Let her mind go blank. Let the road be the only thing that existed. She ended up at the beach, the one her mother had loved, the one where they used to collect shells on summer afternoons, the one that represented safety and childhood in a time before everything got so complicated. Caroline parked, got out, walked to the water's edge. It was cold, windy, the kind of day most people avoided the beach. Perfect. She sat on the sand, stared at the waves, let the sound wash over her, let the cold seep into her bones. Let herself just exist in this moment without thinking about the text, about Dylan's betrayal, about the marriage she had thought was real. For 1 hour, Caroline just sat there, watching the ocean, feeling her daughter kick, processing the fact that her husband had not been neutral, had not been weak, had been complicit, had been malicious, had actively worked to destroy her. The man she married was not the man she thought he married. That man did not exist. And she needed to mourn that loss, needed to grieve the version of Dylan she had loved, even if that version had only ever existed in her imagination. Eventually, the cold became too much. Carolyn returned to her car, called Jessica. "Trevor showed me texts," Caroline said when Jessica answered. "Dylan knew. He helped plan the Gala humiliation. He was part of the custody plot, all of it." Jessica swore, colorfully and at length. "That son of a—" "I know. Are you okay?" "No, but I will be. I just needed to hear it, I guess. Needed to stop giving him the benefit of the doubt. Needed to kill that last little piece of hope that maybe he really did love me." "Where are you?" "The beach, Mom's beach. I'm going to sit here for another hour. Then I am coming back to the estate, and then I am going to file papers that give Dylan minimal custody, 2 supervised hours per week. That is it. He does not get to pretend he is a good father. Not after this." "Good," Jessica said fiercely. "He does not deserve even that much." They hung up. Caroline sat in the car, unable to go inside her own apartment, and let herself break. Really, truly break. All the tears she had been holding back, all the rage, all the grief, it poured out in ugly, choking sobs that left her gasping. And then, when there were no more tears left, Caroline felt something unexpected. Relief. Not happiness, not peace, but relief. Because now she knew, now she had proof. Now she did not have to wonder anymore if she was being too harsh, too unforgiving, too quick to judge. Dylan had shown her exactly who he was, and she finally believed him. The prison door was unlocked all along. She had been her own warden. But not anymore. Carolyn started the car, drove back to the estate, found her father in his study. "Trevor showed me the text," she said. Richard looked up from his work, studied his daughter's face. And I want you to finish it. Whatever you have planned, whatever consequences they deserve. I want Dylan to understand that he does not get to betray me and keep access to our daughter. I want Patricia and Victor to face criminal charges. I want all of it." "You are sure?" "I am sure. My marriage was built on lies. My husband married me for money and resented me for it every day. That is not something I can forgive. That is not something our daughter should have to witness. So yes, finish it." Richard nodded. "It will be done." Caroline turned to leave, stopped at the door. "Dad, Thank you for protecting me, for believing me, for doing what needed to be done even when I was too weak to ask for it. You were never weak, Richard said gently. You were kind. There is a difference. Carolyn smiled sadly. Mom would say the same thing. She would, and she would be proud of you. You are handling this with more grace than I ever could. I learned from the best. She left her father to his work, went to the nursery, looked at the crib, the clothes, the books, everything ready for a baby who would grow up without her father in her life. It was sad. It was also necessary. Caroline would not let her daughter grow up thinking it was normal for people to humiliate each other, to steal, to betray. She would teach her daughter that love was supposed to be safe, kind, honest. Even if Caroline had to learn that lesson the hard way first, the divorce would take months. Her daughter would arrive before it was final. But that was okay. Caroline was learning to be okay with things being messy, with endings that were not neat, with futures that looked nothing like she planned. She was learning to be herself, unapologetically, completely, without making herself small for anyone. And if that made her spoiled in Patricia's eyes, so be it. Caroline would rather be spoiled and safe than humble and broken. 3 months later, Margaret Rose Hayes Morgan was born at 6:23 in the morning. 8 pounds, 3 ounces. Healthy, perfect, with dark hair like her mother and her grandmother before her. Richard Hayes paced the waiting room like an expectant father rather than a grandfather. Jessica was in the delivery room coaching Caroline through contractions and breathing and the impossible work of bringing new life into the world. Dylan was not invited. Caroline had made that decision weeks ago. Her daughter's birth would be a moment of joy, not conflict. Dylan would meet his daughter later, under supervision, on Caroline's terms. When the nurse finally brought Margaret out, wrapped in a pink blanket with a tiny hat covering her dark hair, Richard Hayes cried. Actually cried. Something Caroline had seen exactly twice in her entire life. She looks like Margaret, Richard whispered, holding his granddaughter with the reverence reserved for miracles. She looks exactly like your mother. And she did. The same dark eyes, the same delicate features, the same presence that seemed to say, I am here and I am going to change everything. In the recovery room, Carolyn held her daughter and felt layer 7 complete. This is what it was all for. The humiliation, the betrayal, the grief. All of it had led to this moment, to this perfect, wrinkled, beautiful baby who had no idea how much she was already loved. Hi, Margaret Rose, Carolyn whispered. I am your mom, and I promise you I am going to protect you. I am going to teach you to be strong and kind and to never, ever make yourself small for anyone, not even me. The baby blinked up at her, yawned, made a small noise that might have been agreement or might have just been newborn confusion. Caroline laughed, actually laughed. For the first time in months, genuine joy bubbled up from somewhere deep inside. She was a mother. She had survived. And her daughter would never have to know the woman Caroline had been at the gala, would only know the woman Caroline had become. Stronger, wiser, unbreakable. Dylan met Margaret 2 days later, in the hospital, with Caroline and Jessica present. He cried when he held her, whispered apologies, promises to be better, to do better. Caroline said nothing, just watched her husband, her soon-to-be ex-husband, meet his daughter and wondered if he understood what he had lost. Not Margaret. He would still see her, even if only for supervised hours. But Caroline, the marriage, the future they could have had if he had just chosen differently. The custody agreement was finalized a week after Margaret's birth. Dylan got 2 supervised hours per week, no overnight visits until Margaret was older, no contact with Patricia or Victor without explicit written permission from Caroline. Dylan signed without argument. His lawyer had advised him that fighting would only make things worse, that Caroline's case was airtight, that between the texts, the attempted theft, and the custody conspiracy, Dylan was lucky to get any access at all. Patricia sent letters, dozens of them, begging for a chance to meet her granddaughter, promising she had changed, swearing she never meant to hurt Caroline, that it had all been a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Carolyn burned every letter unread. Some bridges, once burned, could not be rebuilt. Victor was sentenced to 18 months in prison for identity theft and fraud. He would miss Margaret's first words, first steps, first birthday. Patricia divorced him before he started serving his sentence. Trevor said she had moved to Florida. Started over. Stopped talking about Caroline entirely. Good. 6 months after Margaret's birth, Caroline moved into her own apartment. Not her father's estate. Not the apartment she had shared with Dylan. Her own space. Modern and bright with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A nursery done in soft blues and greens. A home office where she studied for the law school entrance exam. Because Caroline had decided to go back to school, to study family law, to help women who were facing the same battles she had fought, who needed someone who understood that custody wars were not about law. They were about power, about who got to control the narrative, about who had resources to fight back. Caroline had those resources, and she was going to use them to help women who did not. Richard visited every Sunday, played with Margaret, told his granddaughter stories about the grandmother she was named after, made sure Caroline knew she was not alone. Jessica visited 3 times a week, brought coffee and Chinese food, and helped with midnight feedings. Was the family Caroline had chosen rather than the one she had been assigned. Trevor visited too. He had become an unexpected ally. The one member of Dylan's family who had chosen truth over loyalty. Who had shown Caroline who her husband really was. Who now sent birthday cards and brought thoughtful gifts and acted like the Uncle Margaret deserved. And Dylan. Dylan came every Tuesday and Thursday for his 2 supervised hours, held his daughter, read her books, made promises about being better, about therapy, about learning from his mistakes. Carolyn did not know if he meant it, did not know if people could really change or if they just got better at hiding who they had always been. But she watched him with Margaret and saw something genuine in his face, something that looked like love or regret or maybe just grief for what he had destroyed. It did not matter. The marriage was over. The divorce was final. Caroline and Dylan were co-parents now. Nothing more. And that was okay. It was enough. It was what their daughter needed. On the 1-year anniversary of the gala, Caroline was invited back to the Ashford Hotel. The same ballroom. The same charity event. The same society crowd that had witnessed her humiliation. She almost did not go. Jessica said she did not have to. Richard said it was her choice. Dr. Morrison said only if she felt emotionally ready. But Caroline went anyway. Wore green again. Not the same shade. Darker. Richer. A color that said, I survived and I am stronger for it. She brought Jessica as her date. Left Margaret with Richard and a very capable nanny. Walked into that ballroom with her head high and her shoulders back. The room went quiet when she entered. Just like it had a year ago. But this time, the silence was not mocking. It was respectful, almost reverent. Carolyn Hayes Morgan, the woman Patricia Morgan had tried to break, stood in the doorway in her dark green gown and diamond earrings and radiated the kind of strength that came from surviving hell and coming out the other side. Claudia Rothwell approached first. Mrs. Morgan, excuse me, Ms. Hayes, may I have a quote for my column? Caroline smiled. The best revenge is not destruction. It is living so well that you forget why you ever wanted it. Claudia wrote that down, smiled. That is perfect, thank you. As the evening progressed, Carolyn mingled, donated generously, spoke with donors about her plans for law school, about the foundation she was starting to help women in custody battles, about her daughter who was perfect and healthy and loved. She did not mention Patricia, did not mention the gala, did not give oxygen to that trauma by acknowledging it. Halfway through the evening, a young woman approached. She was visibly pregnant, maybe 6 months. Her hands shook slightly as she introduced herself. I am sorry to bother you, the woman said, but I saw what happened to you last year. Then I saw your interviews, how you handled everything. It gave me the courage to leave my own situation. My in-laws were awful. My husband was not good. And I thought I had no choice but to stay because of the baby. But you showed me there was another way. So I just wanted to say thank you. Carolyn felt tears prick at her eyes. You are not bothering me. You are validating every hard decision I made. What is your name? Emma. Emma, do you have support? Family? Friends? Resources? Some, but not much. Carolyn pulled out a business card. This is my father's lawyer. He specializes in family law. Call him. Tell him I referred you. He will help you. No charge." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I cannot afford. You do not have to. That is what privilege is for, using it to help others who need it. Promise me you will call him." "I promise. Thank you. Thank you so much." Emma hurried away, clutching the business card like a lifeline. Caroline watched her go and felt something settle in her chest. Purpose. Meaning. The understanding that her pain had not been pointless, that her story could help someone else survive theirs. At the end of the evening, Caroline stood by the same floral arrangement where her dress had been torn, touched the sharp metal base, remembered the sound of fabric ripping, the flash of cameras, the laughter. It felt like a lifetime ago, like it had happened to someone else. The Caroline who had stood here in her emerald gown, desperate for acceptance, no longer existed. In her place was someone harder, stronger, less willing to bend, but also kinder, more empathetic, more determined to use her resources for good. "Ready to go?" Jessica asked, appearing at her elbow. "Almost." Carolyn pulled out her phone, took a photo of the floral arrangement, posted it on social media with a caption. "1 year ago, my mother-in-law tore my dress at this gala. Today, I am wearing green again. Not because I forgave her, not because I forgot, but because I refuse to let that moment define me. I am Caroline Hayes. I am a mother. I am a survivor. And I am just getting started." She posted it, put her phone away, linked her arm through Jessica's. "Now I am ready." They left the Ashford Hotel together. Carolyn did not look back, did not need to. That chapter of her life was closed. The gala was history. Patricia was irrelevant. Dylan was a co-parent, nothing more. And Caroline was free. Free to build the life she wanted. Free to be the mother Margaret deserved. Free to use her story to help others. Free to stop apologizing for being Richard Hayes' daughter. Free to embrace the privilege that came with that identity and use it for good. Free to be herself, unapologetically, completely, without making herself small for anyone ever again. That night, after Margaret was asleep in her crib and the apartment was quiet, Carolyn sat in her home office, pulled out her journal, started writing. My daughter will grow up seeing that video someday, the one where her grandmother tore my dress, where I stood exposed and humiliated in front of 300 people. And when she asked me about it, here is what I will tell her. The gala was not the worst thing that happened to me. It was the best thing because it showed me exactly who I was married to, who his family was, what they were capable of, and it gave me the courage to choose better. For both of us. I will tell her that her grandmother Patricia is not a safe person, that her father Dylan made choices that broke our family, that sometimes the people who are supposed to love us hurt us instead, and that it is okay to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they are family, especially if they are family. I will tell her that her grandfather Richard protected us when no one else would, that her Aunt Jessica stood by us when it would have been easier to walk away, that her Uncle Trevor chose truth over loyalty, that family is not always blood. Sometimes it is choice. Most importantly, I will tell her that she is loved, completely, unconditionally, without reservation, that she will never have to make herself small to earn that love, that she will never have to apologize for being who she is. That is the legacy I am building for her, not the gala, not the humiliation, not the betrayal, just love and strength, and the knowledge that she comes from a line of women who survived, who thrived, who refused to be broken. My mother gave me that gift. Now I am giving it to my daughter, and the cycle of pain ends here. Carolyn closed the journal, checked on Margaret one more time, kissed her sleeping daughter's forehead, whispered promises into the dark. Then she went to bed in her own apartment, in her own space, in her own life that she had built from the wreckage of her marriage. And for the first time in over a year, Caroline Hayes slept through the night. So that is Caroline's story. From the woman who stood in that ballroom with her dress torn and her dignity shattered, to the mother who built a fortress around her daughter and herself. From victim to survivor to someone who is using her story to help others escape their own toxic situations. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Caroline's father went too far? Or did Patricia and Victor get exactly what they deserved? Was Dylan truly complicit? Or was he just weak? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love seeing your perspectives on these complex family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, if you felt that satisfying justice in watching someone finally stand up for themselves, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It tells me you want more stories like this. Real stories about real people navigating impossible situations and coming out stronger. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe they are in their own difficult family situation. Maybe they are questioning whether they are overreacting to someone's cruelty. Maybe they just need validation that leaving toxic people is not weakness. It is wisdom. Your share could be exactly what someone needs to hear today. And if you are new here, welcome to the channel. We tell stories about resilience, about justice, about people who refuse to stay broken. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because trust me, Caroline's story is just one of many, and they all prove the same thing. You are stronger than you think. You deserve better than cruelty. And sometimes the best revenge is living so well that you forget why you ever wanted it in the first place. I will see you in the next story. Until then, remember, you are not alone, you are not crazy, and you deserve to be believed. Take care of yourselves out there. The sound of fabric tearing, a gasp, 300 people turning to stare. Caroline Hayes Morgan stood frozen as her designer gown fell apart, exposing her 7-month pregnant body to an entire ballroom of society's elite. The cameras flashed, the whispers started, and her mother-in-law smiled. But that torn dress, that was just the beginning. What Caroline discovered in the hours after that gala would expose a conspiracy so twisted, so calculated, that even her billionaire father could not believe it. Her in-laws had not just humiliated her for fun. They had a plan that involved her trust fund, her unborn baby, and a scheme that would land them in federal court. And her husband? He knew. The whole time. This is the story of how one moment of public humiliation became the catalyst for the most satisfying takedown you will ever hear. Of how a pregnant woman, stripped of her dignity, fought back. And of how sometimes the best revenge is not destruction. It is transformation. If you are ready for a story about betrayal, justice, and a billionaire father who does not play games when his daughter is attacked, then settle in. This is going to be one wild ride. And hey, if this story gives you that righteous anger satisfaction you have been craving, smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me whose side you are on. Share this with someone who needs to hear that walking away from toxic people is not giving up. It is leveling up. And subscribe because trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next in stories like these. Now let us get into it. The sound of fabric tearing cut through the ballroom like a knife. 300 heads turned in unison. Caroline Hayes Morgan stood frozen, her hand instinctively moving to her 7-month pregnant belly. The emerald gown she had spent weeks selecting hung in tatters around her shoulders. The entire back panel gaped open, exposing her nude shapewear and the obvious swell of her pregnancy. For one perfect, terrible moment, the grand ballroom of the Ashford Hotel went completely silent. Then someone laughed. Patricia Morgan stood 3 feet away, champagne glass in hand, her perfectly manicured nails catching the crystal chandelier light. Her mouth curved into something that might have been concern if her eyes had not been so bright with satisfaction. "Oh dear," Patricia said, her voice carrying across the marble floor. "These designer dresses just are not made for, well, real bodies." Carolyn's hands shook. She felt the flash of phone cameras, heard the sharp intake of breath from the society women clustered near the buffet, saw Dylan across the room still talking to his colleagues, oblivious to what had just happened to his wife. It took him 30 seconds to notice. 30 seconds of Caroline standing there, exposed, while 300 people stared at her pregnant body. "Mom?" Dylan's voice finally cut through the murmurs. "What happened?" Not "Caroline, are you okay?" Not "are you hurt?" Just "what happened?" Directed at his mother, Patricia's hand flew to her mouth in a perfect imitation of horror. "I was just trying to help. She had a loose thread, and I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. The fabric just gave way. These expensive dresses, so delicate. Carolyn could not speak. Her throat had closed completely. This was not an accident. She had seen Patricia's face a moment before the tear, had seen the deliberate way her mother-in-law had caught the dress on the elaborate floral arrangement, had felt a sharp tug that was too hard, too purposeful to be anything but intentional. Caroline, Jessica Brennan was suddenly there, wrapping a borrowed coat around Caroline's shoulders. Come on, let's get you somewhere private.